Welcome to Expert Views on ADR Ever Video Podcast Show, a podcast about simplifying the traditional African method of settling disputes or the appropriate dispute resolution ADR in a bid to attract more users to settle their disputes with mediation, arbitration, collaborative law, negotiation, conciliation, early dispute resolution, restorative justice, adjudication, and of course, early neutral evaluation. My name is DrChinweEgbunike, the host of Ever Show. This week, I'm sitting with Stephen Tolfree, a forgiveness coach and boss whisperer. He speaks internationally on the benefits of forgiveness, and his work has been cited in Psychology Today. Two universities are planning a study of his work. Welcome to the show, Stephen.
Good morning, Chinwe. Really nice to meet you. Nice to be here.
So, without further ado, can you expand on how holding on resentment keeps people from healing?
Oh, that's a really great place to start. Yeah, so we're going to end up talking about forgiveness, but the place to start thinking about forgiveness is resentment. And resentment is a really normal thing. And when any of us or many of us are mistreated, we hold on to resentment. And I would wish I didn't, but I do that too. And we're resentment because we're holding out for revenge or justice, like to get even, basically. And that's fine, but then there are a series of consequences that people are unaware that are happening, and these consequences are really harmful for the individual. So, in order to stay resentful, we need to stay angry. But to stay angry, we need to stay in pain.
Yeah.
And staying in pain means that we artificially interrupt the body's natural healing process. So the body, let's talk about it in a physical way. The body is really good at healing physical wounds. Like you have a cut on your arm, it bleeds, it hurts, the tissue's broken, the skin's broken. You put a bit of pressure on, and then after a while, the clot starts to appear, and then the clot dries up and becomes a scab, and then the scab stays there for weeks or months, and then eventually the scab falls off, and when it falls off, the skin has healed over underneath. And you can't see it, but you can imagine the tissue has knitted itself back together, and it normally no longer hurts. But sometimes, like if it's been a really serious injury, you're left with the white lines. There's a scar, but nonetheless, the skin completely heals over, and it's very rare to think of any wound that doesn't heal over. And I think that the same process happens with emotional wounds. And then, of course, the big but is if we stay resentful, we prevent that natural healing process from going on. So we're keeping our finger effectively jabbed in the wound and stopping that clot from forming. And so the work I mostly do is in the context of workplace conflict and bullying. And the three most common things that get damaged are trust in others, not trust in the person that's harmed you, because that would be stupid, but trust in others in general, confidence, and positivity. And if people stay resentful, those things are really slow to recover. And they're slow to recover because we're keeping our finger jabbed in the wound to stop it from healing. So, and people just don't know they're doing this. Like, this is not a conscious choice anyone would deliberately make to slow down their healing. I mean, it's a bit perverse. But because we don't know we're doing it, with the drive for revenge and the drive for justice leaves us to stay resentful. And so that's why resentment is so harmful. It means healing is really, really slow.
Thank you so very much for that. It's quite insightful, and if we don't sort of forgive, we're in pain, and that is not good for our body. So thank you so very much for highlighting that, Stephen. And so how does it, in the context of workplace, how does what does healing mean in the context of workplace, and can it be distinguished from ADR, particularly mediation?
Yeah, so it's not part of mediation, it's not part of ADR. But people come to ADR because they want justice. And so they will get through ADR, they will get an agreed outcome. And for some people, getting an agreemented outcome, and if there's a sincere apology that makes things better, that might be enough for them to let go of their resentments. So for some people, going through ADR, that leads them to heal. It can be a healing process, and I'm sure your people you work with will say that they see that often happening. So in that case, when that happens, there's no need for forgiveness. But there are other people who go through that process, they get an agreed outcome, maybe they have compensation, but they still feel bitter about what happened.
Yeah.
And that means that though they've got the emotional, though they've got the financial repair, they haven't had the emotional repair. And therefore, if you want to help your client to recover as fully as they can, signposting them to forgiveness could allow them to recover much more quickly. So it's not part of the ADR process. But it's something that someone would do for their own self-interest, maybe at the end of it, if they don't feel that they've had a healing process through ADR.
Okay, thank you so very much. So, what are the likely consequences in the context of organizational, psychological, where forgiveness is encouraged, discouraged, or ignored after the conflict or workplace conflict has arisen?
Okay, so maybe I didn't say this earlier, just to say that forgiveness is the technical word for letting go of resentment.
Yeah.
So when we say forgiveness, we mean letting go. Basically, it's the shorter way of letting go of resentment. And psychologically, it means that your psychological wounds get healed. So your trust comes back, your confidence comes back, and your positivity comes back. And all of that makes you into a stronger individual. Then secondly, and this is kind of linked to the positivity, if you are resentful, then you're seeing the world through a prism, and you're seeing pain and injustice everywhere. And that's of course because pain and injustice is everywhere.
Exactly.
But that's true. But also there is goodness, there is love, there is kindness, there is beauty everywhere too. Like both those things are true. And when you are kind of consumed with resentment, you filter out all those good things. And that means it's very hard to be optimistic. So this is not necessarily in an organizational context, but no, it's true in organization, but it's even more true if someone's freelance. So in my wife is freelance, and she has to take lots of opportunities to try and progress her career. Most of those opportunities will not work. But if she does enough of them, she will get an opportunity that pays off. And she does that because she's optimistic and because she sees the world through a positive lens. Whereas if you are bitter, you're filtering out all that positivity, and therefore you're unlikely to be taking opportunities. And it's also true in the workplace as well, that we need to progress. We need to take opportunities, and maybe a good number of those opportunities won't work out, but if we keep at it, they will. And yeah, so those are the main, and also it brings us peace. So if we're no longer preoccupying with the pain of the past, we have a kind of a sense of inner peace. So those are the benefits for the individual. But you ask, well, what's the benefit for the organization?
Yes.
So two real benefits. One is risk, in that if there has been workplace conflict that has gone wrong, then the employer owes a duty of care, and legally you want to put someone in the law of tort, you want to put someone back into the position they were in before the tort occurred. And if you help them with their emotional repair, not just disciplining or whatever you do about the situation, and putting the situation right or compensating, but if you help with emotional repair, then you are putting people much more back into the position they were emotionally before the tort. And that also reduces, in the UK we have injury to feelings compensation people can be entitled to. There would be less need for that if there is less injury to the feelings. So there's a kind of a risk aspect, but I think more important is a productivity aspect.
Okay.
So if I am lacking in positivity, I'm lacking in confidence, and I'm lacking in trust, I am not going to be performing at my best. And I have clients who have had difficult workplace conflict more than a decade ago, and they have had more than a decade of underperforming. They come for one forgiveness session, they let go of the pain of the past, and then when I catch up with them a year later, many of those people have been promoted because they've kind of inflated back to their full natural size, and they're giving to their full capacity at work, and that means the organisation is more productive. So so for the organisation there's a risk management perspective, but there is also a productivity question, and that's particularly because I work in the public sector where people are often employees for life. So you've got the rest of their life of them performing, and surely you want them to be performing at their best rather than suboptimally.
Oh, thank you so very much. That's quite insightful. So does it mean that forgiving, does it mean that we allow ourselves to be walked all over?
So that's you've picked on the one important caveat about forgiveness that we need to be a bit careful of. So this is easier to think about this in a relationship context. So if I am in an abusive marriage, my partner abuses me, and then I forgive them, and then they abuse me again, and I forgive them, and they abuse me again, and I forgive them, and they abuse me again, I forgive them. That is really toxic. So forgiveness needs to be combined with healthy boundaries. So in a workplace conflict, healthy boundaries is often not so relevant, because normally the relationship has ruptured and has ended, and they're no longer working together. So boundaries are not so important. But where a relationship is ongoing, you need to have healthy boundaries. So in the context of the abusive marriage, if you are just forgiving and not saying this behavior needs to stop, and if the behavior continues, you are not leaving or following through with consequences, that is really, really toxic. So forgiveness needs to be combined with healthy boundaries.
Awesome. Thank you so very much for that clarification. So should forgiveness-based approaches be optional or mandatory?
Absolutely optional. So there is I can't quite put my finger on this properly, Chinwe, but there is this often an assumption that people think you must forgive or you ought to forgive, and I think that because forgiveness it's funny. Forgiveness is an emotional contact word that we all know about, but we hardly ever talk about it. So you hear all people talking all the time about empathy, and all the time people talk about things like resilience, but forgiveness is hardly ever talked about. But where it is talked about is in the religious context, and in the UK, the dominant religion is Christianity, and forgiveness is central to Christianity. And Christianity says to Christians, you should forgive. And I think therefore there is a hangover from that when people use the word forgiveness, they think that there is a you should. I would rephrase that and say forgiveness is really good for you, and that's why it would be a good thing for you to do, but it's not something that you should be mandated to do. So absolutely, it should be a free choice, and it shouldn't ever be imposed on someone. Not everyone can forgive, but my experience is that nearly all of my clients, not all of them, but nearly all of my clients, when the truth of what forgiveness can do in terms of healing our emotional wounds, when they see that, nearly all say, okay, I want to forgive. When they have the kind of myths dispelled about forgiveness, because there are many myths, kind of incorrect myths about it, they do want to forgive. So most people do not want to go walking around with a wound, and forgiveness offers an opportunity to heal that wound. But saying someone should do it or must do it is not helpful.
So do you think that we sort of put that in a workplace, sort of with the HR telling the employees, let's take for an instance that there is an employee and having issues with a fellow employee or an employer, would they sort of state the benefits of forgiveness, sort of, let the parties involved in dispute to know, these are the benefits, like what you said, it causes, if you stay, if you don't forgive, it leads to resentment, and of course, resentment leads to pain, and sort of why we should think about forgiving, in workplace and dispute or conflict. What do you think?
This is another really, really challenging question, Chinwe. Let's see if I can give a halfway adequate answer to you. So I'm a forgiveness coach, but on my LinkedIn, I don't use the word forgiveness. On my website, I don't use the word forgiveness. And the reason I don't use the word forgiveness is that forgiveness is misunderstood. And people think that forgiveness is a gift to the person that's harmed them. That's one of the things very, very common said about it. But in the context of bullying, where the relationship is over, probably the person that harmed you is unaware of whether you're resentful or forgiving. So it's going to be like, in most cases, not all cases, but most cases, it's going to have no impact on the other person. But the impact on you is huge if you get back your confidence, you get back your trust, and you get back your positivity. So the gift is mostly for the individual, like 99 or 95% of the gift of forgiveness is for ourselves, not for the other person. So there's this misunderstanding that it's a gift. So if HR say, and so I don't talk about it. I talk about it with you because I've got you here. We've got time for me to unpack it and explain it. If I do a talk, I talk about forgiveness. But in my initial wording that I use on my website says letting go of resentment. So people, that's what forgiveness is. But the forgiveness word can be quite triggering. So for HR to use the forgiveness word could also be triggering, and that's particularly, most cases of bullying are not upheld by organisations because of a lack of evidence. So if I was told I should forgive by a representative of the organisation that has not stepped in and dealt and produced what I believe to be, the organisation has delivered what the organisation believes to be justice, but I as the individual don't think it's a justice, and then I'm told that I should forgive, which means giving a gift to the person that harms me. You can see that might trigger people. So I think it needs to be carefully handled. So one thing is to send someone to a coach who specializes, like me, in recovery from bullying. And then the coach can say, here is, or to have a video or a book that is about recovery. And then, so HR don't say you should forgive. They say, do you want to see some resources on how to recover? Or do you want some support on how to recover? And then when people access those resources or support, it explains and unpacks forgiveness. But I think it is a bit of a delicate place for HR as the representative of the organisation that the individual believes has harmed them to say you should forgive, because many people would get enraged by that, I think. So it's a little bit of a delicate topic.
Yeah, thank you so very much for clarifying that. What I hear you say is that the forgiveness it's deals with only one person. That's what you do. That's you sort of coach people about forgiveness. It's not necessarily to forgive the second party, but to sort of heal and not be in.
So forgiveness is letting go of the anger towards the other person.
Okay.
So it is about it is about the other person,
Awesome. Yeah.
but it doesn't require the other person. So people, there are things that one of the myths of forgiveness is that it requires an apology.
Yeah.
And certainly if someone gives me a sincere apology, it will make it easier for me to forgive. But if I make my forgiveness conditional on an apology or conditional on the behavior of the person that has harmed me, I'm putting all of my healing into the hands of someone who I believe has not shown much regard for my well-being. So forgiveness does not require anything from the other person. So you do not need them to take obviously if they take responsibility, it is much easier to forgive. And in the rare occasions where people do apologize and there is sincerity and taking response for the actions and seeing the impact and wanting to put things right and wanting to be different in the future, like when there is that kind of constellation of things, sometimes that can lead to a reconciliation. And that is like utterly beautiful, but it's also beautiful because it's super rare, because it requires a whole lot of behavior on the part of the other person. So forgiveness in rare occasions can lead to reconciliation, but for the vast majority of people, it's an internal process that is about their healing going forward in relation to the other person, but not requiring anything of the other person, not requiring the other person to apologize, not requiring the other person to take responsibility. Because if you do require, you're basically saying, I'm going to wait for them to behave properly before I heal, and therefore you're going to be waiting forever.
In most cases, yeah.
Yeah.
All right, thank you so very much for the clarification. So, what role, if any, should forgiveness play in formal workplace dispute resolution processes, such as mediation and restorative justice?
So, I think that this is something that mediators, if they feel that an individual, they've helped get someone to an outcome, an agreed outcome. Maybe there's compensation, maybe there's kind of organizational changes or something, but they've got an outcome. If they feel that the individual is still holding on to resentment, they can recommend to them that not part of the ADR process, not part of the mediation process, but almost in terms of your kind of duty of care, in terms of wanting to do the best for your clients, would signpost them to either to resources or to services that help with forgiveness. So I see that as like a signposting. So it's not part of the process, but a signposting at the end. And of course, that's almost easier when you've got conciliation, because that's when the conciliator is there to kind of give advice, whereas the mediator is typically not giving advice. But this, I think, would be at the end of the process is finished, and then a signposting at the end if they think it might be helpful for the individual.
Okay, thank you so very much for that. So, is forgiveness necessary for rebuilding professional trust and ongoing working relationships, or can healing occur without forgiveness?
Oh, so that's also a really challenging question. So I think that forgiveness is letting go of anger. It's letting go of the need for justice. And if we hold on to that tightly, we're going to stay angry, we're going to stay in pain, we're going to keep our finger jabbed in the wound. So forgiveness is by far the best way of helping. But there are kind of lesser versions of forgiveness that sometimes people have a real problem with the word forgiveness because, like I say, it's associated with religion, and in those circumstances, something lesser, which is like a version of forgiveness but not as strong, like acceptance. So acceptance can help that process too. So if people are averse, very, very strongly averse to forgiveness, then acceptance won't bring the healing as quickly, but it will bring some of the healing.
Thank you so very much, Stephen, for this masterclass. I'm super grateful that you came on the show. And I know a lot of people would want to know how can they become a forgiveness coach?
So that's
you train for it, or
there are very, very few people who do this. I know of one other person in the UK. I know of like 3 or 4 people in America who do it. So but there is a lady called Eileen Barker who is, I don't have her website details offhand, but she trains people in forgiveness. The method she trains in is a 12-step process. The forgiveness method I have developed is just a single 2-hour session. So mine is probably more appropriate for an ADR than hers. Hers is more substantial, more deep. But she may end up training people in my method because she thinks it's the most appropriate method to use in the forgiveness context. So, but Eileen Barker would be the person if people are interested in getting trained in forgiveness.
Oh, thank you so very much. I know that a lot of dispute resolution advocates would sort of embrace all you have stated and hearing, and sort of most of them practicing would adopt this technique, skills that you mentioned, hearing to their settlement structure. There is a type of mediation that you can actually advise the party on what to do, so I think many people would sort of incorporate that in their settlement structure one way or the other. And I'm also looking at restorative justice, the kind of dispute resolution that can embody forgiveness structure into their settlement structure as well, because you find out that most people, once they get that apology, they sort of let go, and imagine in a setting where 2 people can actually come together and forgive each other and carry on doing business. That would be awesome.
Yeah,
that would be great. So
that's like the goal. It's difficult to get it happen, but it's easy to get one person to forgive. It's not necessary if they want to. It's more of a challenge to get 2 people, but when that happens, that must be really beautiful to see.
Let's keep looking at studying what you're doing and see maybe one day to get there. But thank you so very much for all the work you've done so far and bringing it on this show. Thank you so very much for your teachings. Carry on.
And just to say that if people want to reach out to me, I've got an unusual spelled name. So I'm probably easy to find on LinkedIn, and my website is rehabilitate.uk.
I'm going to leave your website on the YouTube description and also on the podcast description. So, and maybe your email. So in case if they want to contact you directly, then they can go ahead.
Yeah, wonderful. It's at Stephen at stephentolfree.com.
All right. Thank you so very much, Stephen. Thank you
My
so
pleasure.
very much.
Have a good day, Chinwe. Take care. Lovely to speak to you. Bye-bye.